Nora Prescott's fingernail broke against the wooden post as she carved the third mark of the day. Evening. Her father would come soon. The whiskey on his breath, the lock clicking shut 3 times, every single day. She had stopped counting weeks ago. Now she only counted the marks. 18 years old, locked in her dead mother's stable like livestock. And nobody in Silver Creek, Arizona knew. Nobody cared to look. Until the stranger's shadow fell across the straw where she sat bleeding. Before we ride deeper into this dust and heartbreak, go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. Settle in and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Because what happens next didn't just change one girl's life. It shook an entire territory. The stable door groaned when Caleb Thornton pushed it open. He had come for a horse. Josiah Prescott had posted word at the saloon that he had a young mare for sale, desert broke and steady. Caleb needed steady. His ranch couldn't afford another spooked animal that threw riders into cacti. What he found instead made him forget why he had come. A girl sat in the corner stall, knees pulled to her chest, wearing nothing but a torn gray dress that barely covered her thighs. Dirt caked her bare feet. Her hair, the color of sun-bleached honey, hung limp and tangled around a face too thin for someone her age. She flinched when his shadow touched her. Not the flinch of someone startled. The flinch of someone expecting a blow. Caleb removed his hat slowly. He took one step back, not forward. Gave her space. His eyes moved to the iron ring bolted into the wall behind her. The short chain lying in the straw. The raw red marks around her left wrist where skin had worn away against metal. Then he saw the post beside her. 3 fresh cuts. Shallow. Made with a knife or a sharp stone. Below them, dozens more. Rows and rows of marks carved into that wood like a prisoner counting days. She watched him the way a trapped coyote watches a man holding a rope. "Who did this?" Caleb asked. His voice came out rough. She didn't answer. Her cracked lips parted closed, parted again. When she finally spoke, the words scraped out of her throat like they cost her something. "My father." Caleb felt something shift in his chest. Something old. Something he thought he had buried in Texas 3 years ago when he walked away from a badge and a woman he couldn't save. How often, he asked, though part of him didn't want to know. She pointed at the post. 3 marks. Fresh. Morning, midday, night. 3 times a day. Caleb's jaw tightened until his teeth ached. "He drinks." She continued, her voice flat now. Empty. "Then he comes. Then he locks the door." The heat inside that stable pressed down on Caleb like a physical weight. Sweat rolled down his spine. But the cold in his gut had nothing to do with temperature. He had known Josiah Prescott by reputation. Small-time horse trader. Regular at the card tables in town. Folks whispered about his debts and his drinking. But folks whispered about a lot of men out here. Nobody whispered about a daughter. "What's your name?" Caleb asked. "Nora." She swallowed hard. "Nora Prescott." "How old are you, Nora?" 19. Last month. Old enough to own property. Old enough to sign legal papers. Caleb's eyes went back to the chain, to the marks on her wrist, to the dozens of cuts on that post that told him this had been happening for months. "He wants me to sign something," Nora said suddenly, as if reading his thoughts. "My mother's land. There's water on it. A spring." There it was. Not just cruelty. Purpose. In Arizona territory, water meant power. A spring could be worth more than gold to the right buyer, and a daughter's signature on a deed could quiet a lot of gambling debts. "You refused," Caleb said. "Not a question. Every time." Her chin lifted slightly. "Just enough. He can beat me until I'm dead. I won't sign." Something flickered in her eyes then. Not hope, defiance. Buried deep under the fear and the hunger and the months of darkness, but still alive. Caleb heard bootfalls outside, heavy, uneven. The stumbling gait of a man who had started drinking before noon. Nora's whole body went rigid. "He's back," she whispered. Caleb turned toward the stable door. His hand moved to his belt, not to the gun holstered there, but to rest near it. A warning position. A ready position. The door swung open. Josiah Prescott filled the frame. He was a big man gone soft, gut straining against a stained vest, face red and bloated from years of whiskey. But his eyes were sharp, calculating. The eyes of a man who had learned to hurt people in ways that didn't leave obvious marks, until recently. Josiah stopped when he saw Caleb standing in his stable. "Thornton." His voice carried false warmth. "Didn't expect you till tomorrow." "Came early." Caleb didn't move. "Saw your daughter." Josiah's smile flickered, just for a moment. Then he waved a dismissive hand. "She gets dramatic in the heat. Girls her age, you know how they are. Wild streak a mile wide. She's chained to a wall. For her own good." Josiah stepped inside, trying to move past Caleb toward the stall. "Runs off otherwise. I'm protecting her." Caleb shifted, just enough to block the path, not aggressive, firm. "From what?" "From herself." Josiah's eyes hardened. "This ain't your concern, Thornton. You came for a horse. The mare's in the back paddock. Go look her over." "I'm looking at something else right now." The false friendliness drained from Josiah's face. What replaced it was colder, meaner. "You're on my land," he said quietly. "In my stable, talking about my daughter. A man could take offense. A man could." They stood there, two men measuring each other, the summer heat thick between them. Behind Caleb, Nora had pressed herself against the wall, making herself small, invisible. The instinct of prey. Josiah saw it. Something ugly crossed his face. Satisfaction. The pleasure of a man who had trained someone to cower. "Nora?" His voice cracked like a whip. "Tell the man you're fine. Tell him to mind his business." Silence. "Nora." She didn't speak, didn't move, didn't obey. Caleb watched Josiah's hands curl into fists. "I'll take the mare," Caleb said evenly. "And I'll hire your daughter for the drive back to my ranch. I need help with the horses. I'll pay fair wages." Josiah laughed, a short barking sound with no humor in it. "She ain't for hire. She ain't livestock either." The words landed hard. Josiah's face flushed darker. "You don't know what you're stepping into, Thornton. This is family business. Law in this territory sides with a father. Always has." "Maybe." Caleb's voice stayed level. "But I reckon the law might have questions about chains and starvation. Discipline, that's all it is. Spare the rod, spoil the child. She's 19, not a child. She's mine until she marries." Josiah took a step forward. "And she won't marry, can't. You know why? Because no man wants damaged goods. No man wants a girl who's been careful," Caleb said softly, dangerously. Josiah stopped, studied Caleb's face. Whatever he saw there made him reassess. "You don't want this fight," Josiah said, but some of the certainty had left his voice. "No, I don't." Caleb meant it. "So let's not have one. I'll pay you $20 for the mare and $10 to hire your daughter for 1 week's work. That's more than fair." "She's worth more than—" Josiah stopped himself. But too late. Worth more than. The admission hung in the air. This wasn't about a father protecting a wayward daughter. This was about a man calculating the value of a signature, the price of water rights, the cost of his gambling debts. Nora made a small sound, not quite a laugh, bitter, broken. "There it is," she whispered. "Tell him what I'm worth, Father. Tell him about Victor Crane and what you owe him." Josiah's whole body went still. Then, faster than a drunk man should move, he lunged past Caleb toward the stall. Caleb caught him by the arm, swung him around. Josiah threw a punch that caught Caleb's shoulder, wild, sloppy. The swing of a man used to hitting someone who couldn't fight back. Caleb didn't throw punches. He didn't need to. He simply drove forward, used his weight, and slammed Josiah back against the stable wall. Wood cracked. A horse kicked in a nearby stall. Dust exploded into the air. Josiah swung again. Missed. Caleb pinned his arms. Enough. Get off me. She's my daughter, mine. She's a person. She's nothing. Josiah spit. His face had gone purple with rage. Just like her mother was nothing. Just another mouth I had to feed. Just another weight around my neck. In the stall behind them, Nora flinched. Not at the violence. At the words. Those cut deeper than any chain. Caleb saw her face, saw something crack and then harden behind her eyes. He released Josiah, stepped back. The older man slumped against the wall, breathing hard, glaring with pure hatred. "I'll go to the marshal," Josiah panted. "Tell him you attacked me. Tell him you're stealing my daughter." "Do it." The calmness in Caleb's voice made Josiah hesitate. "You think Ruth Decker won't take my side?" Josiah sneered. "You think that woman Marshall has any real power? I think she'll want to see those marks on your daughter's wrists. I think she'll want to count the cuts on that post. I think she'll have questions about why a 19-year-old woman was chained in a stall like an animal." Josiah's sneer faltered. "And I think," Caleb continued quietly, "Victor Crane won't be happy when folks start asking questions about what exactly you owe him, what papers he wants signed, what land he's after." The color drained from Josiah's face. "How do you know about—" "I didn't. Until just now." Caleb allowed himself a grim smile. "Thank you." He turned to the stall, reached for the latch. "Don't," Josiah said. But the fight had gone out of his voice. "Please, you don't understand. Crane will kill me. That's between you and him." Caleb opened the stall door, looked at Nora. She hadn't moved from the corner. Her eyes darted between him and her father like she was trying to figure out which direction the next blow would come from. "Can you walk?" Caleb asked. She nodded slowly. "Then come with me. My wagon's outside. I'll take you somewhere safe." Nora didn't move. Didn't trust it. Didn't trust him. Caleb understood. He had seen that look before. On the face of a woman in Texas who had been beaten so long she didn't believe safety existed anymore. He had failed that woman. Let her go back to the man who killed her. Not again. Never again. "I'm not asking you to trust me," he said quietly. "I'm asking you to take one step. Just one. Out of this stall. Out of his reach." Nora's eyes met his, searching, testing. Then she reached down, grabbed a handful of straw, and threw it straight into her father's face. Josiah sputtered, cursed Claude at his eyes. Nora bolted, past her father, past Caleb, out the stable door and into the blinding Arizona sun. Caleb followed. He found her standing by his wagon chest, heaving bare feet, bleeding on the hot ground. She looked like she might run, like she might collapse, like she might do both at the same time. Caleb grabbed a canvas coat from the wagon bed, handed it to her without a word. She wrapped it around herself, hiding the torn dress, hiding her body from the world. "Get in," he said. She climbed up onto the wagon seat. Behind them, Josiah stumbled out of the stable. He didn't charge, didn't shout. He just stood there, face red, with straw stuck in his hair, watching them with eyes that promised this wasn't over. "You're making a mistake," he called out. His voice shook. "She's mine by law. The territory will back me. You'll see." Caleb picked up the reins. "Maybe," he said. "But she's not yours by right. Not anymore." He clicked his tongue. The horses moved. As the wagon rolled away from the Prescott property, Nora sat rigid beside him. She didn't look back, not once, but her hands gripped the seat so hard her knuckles went white. A mile down the road she finally spoke. "He won't let this go." Her voice was steadier now, colder. "He owes Victor Crane $200. Crane doesn't want money. He wants the land. My mother's land. The spring." "Who's Victor Crane?" "He owns the Dusty Rose Saloon. Half the men in Silver Creek owe him something." She paused. "And he collects. One way or another." Caleb kept his eyes on the road ahead. The sun was starting its long slide toward the western horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and blood. "Your father said he'd go to the marshal." "He will." Nora's jaw tightened. Ruth Decker's fair, but fair doesn't always mean she can help. In this territory, a father's word still carries weight, even a father like him. "What about your word?" Nora went quiet for a long moment. "Nobody's asked for my word before." Caleb looked at her then, really looked. At the bruises visible at the edge of the canvas coat. At the marks on her wrist, still raw and weeping. At the face that had aged a decade in a matter of months. "I'm asking now," he said. She met his eyes, held them. "He'll come for me," she said. Not a warning. A fact. "And he'll bring Crane's men. They won't fight fair. They won't follow law. And anyone who helps me will become a target too." Caleb nodded slowly. "Good to know. You're still helping?" "Yes." "Why?" The question hung in the air. Caleb could have given her a simple answer, could have said he was a decent man, could have said he hated bullies. All of it would have been true. But the real answer was in Texas, buried in a grave he hadn't visited in 3 years. "Because I've seen what happens when nobody helps," he said finally. "And I can't watch it happen again." Nora didn't respond, but something in her posture shifted. Just slightly. Just enough. The wagon rolled on toward Caleb's ranch, 2 figures against the vast Arizona sky. Behind them, the dust of the Prescott place settled. And in town, in the back room of the Dusty Rose Saloon, a man named Victor Crane was about to learn that his investment had just gotten complicated. The wagon wheels had barely stopped turning when Nora climbed down without waiting for help. Her bare feet hit the packed dirt of Caleb's ranch yard, and she winced at the heat, but didn't complain. She stood there wrapped in that canvas coat, looking around like she expected the walls to close in at any moment. Caleb unhitched the horses in silence. He had learned long ago that some people needed quiet more than questions. "There's a room in the house," he said finally. "Clean bed, lock on the inside." Nora's head snapped toward him. "Lock on the inside. You control it, not me, not anyone else." She stared at him for a long moment. Then something in her shoulders released. Just a fraction. Just enough. "I'll need clothes," she said. Her voice was stronger now. Away from that stable, away from her father, she was already changing. "And boots. Can't work barefoot." "Work? You said you'd hire me." Her chin lifted. "I'm holding you to it. I don't take charity." Caleb almost smiled. Almost. "Fair enough. Elena Vasquez in town does sewing. I'll send word." "Elena," Nora's expression shifted, softened. "She's still in Silver Creek. You know her. She was kind to my mother, before." Nora didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Caleb led her to the house, showed her the room, watched her test the lock 3 times before she believed it worked. "I'll be in the barn," he said. "Holler if you need anything." He was halfway out the door when her voice stopped him. "Thornton." He turned. Nora stood by the window silhouette, sharp against the fading light. "Why do you have a lock on the inside of a guest room?" The question cut deeper than she knew. "Because I learned the hard way," Caleb said quietly, "that some people need to know they can keep the world out." He closed the door behind him, heard the lock click into place. In the barn, He sat on a hay bale and let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. His hands were shaking. Not from the fight with Josiah. From the memory. Texas. 3 years ago. A woman named Sarah. Blue eyes full of fear. He had found her hiding in a church after her husband had broken 2 of her ribs. He had offered to help. She had said she couldn't leave. He had respected her choice. 2 weeks later, she was dead. Caleb pressed his palms against his eyes until he saw stars. Not again. Whatever it took, not again. The sound of approaching hooves pulled him back to the present. He moved to the barn door hand, instinctively dropping to his gun. A single rider, coming fast. Caleb's grip tightened, but as the figure drew closer, he recognized the worn hat, the straight-backed posture, the silver star catching the last of the daylight. Ruth Decker, the marshal. She reined up, hard dust swirling around her horse's legs. Her face was grim. "Thornton, we need to talk." "Figured you'd come." Ruth dismounted with the efficiency of someone who had spent more time in a saddle than a chair. She was 50 gray, streaking her brown hairlines carved deep around her eyes. But those eyes were sharp, missed nothing. "Josiah Prescott was in my office an hour ago," she said. "Filed a complaint. Says you assaulted him and kidnapped his daughter." "That's so. That's what he says." Ruth crossed her arms. "What do you say?" "I say I found a 19-year-old woman chained to a wall. Starved, beaten, counting the days by carving marks into a post." Ruth's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. "He's claiming parental rights. Says she's unstable, needs to be controlled for her own safety." "Does a stable person chain their daughter like an animal?" "In the eyes of the law." "To hell with the eyes of the law." Caleb's voice rose before he could stop it. "I saw her wrists, Ruth. Raw to the bone. I saw dozens of marks on that post. 3 times a day. Morning, midday, night. That's not discipline. That's torture." Ruth held up a hand. "I'm not your enemy here. I'm telling you what I'm up against." Caleb forced himself to breathe. "She's inside. Talk to her yourself." "I intend to." Ruth paused. "But Thornton Victor Crane was in my office this morning too, before Josiah, asking questions about water rights, about the Prescott land." Caleb's jaw tightened. "What kind of questions?" "The kind a man asks when he's planning something." Ruth's voice dropped. "I've been marshal here for 4 years. Took over when my husband died. I know how this town works. Crane owns half of it, and the other half owes him. If he wants that land, he'll find a way to get it. Then we stop him." "We—" Ruth shook her head slowly. "You've been here 6 months, Thornton. You don't know what you're stepping into." "I know enough." "Do you—" She stepped closer. "Crane has judges in his pocket. Deputies who look the other way. Men who will swear to anything if the price is right. You think one rancher and one marshal can stand against that? I think we have to try." Ruth studied him for a long moment. Whatever she saw in his face seemed to satisfy her. "Let me talk to the girl," she said finally. "Then we'll figure out next steps." Caleb led her to the house, knocked on Nora's door. "It's Thornton. Marshal Decker's here. She wants to talk to you." Silence. Then the sound of the lock turning. Nora opened the door. She had washed her face, tied back her hair. But the fear was still there, lurking beneath the surface. "Marshal?" Her voice was steady, but her hands weren't. "Miss Prescott." Ruth's tone softened. "May I come in?" Nora glanced at Caleb. "I'll be right outside," he said. She nodded and stepped back to let Ruth enter. Caleb waited on the porch. The sun had set now, and the first stars were appearing. He could hear the murmur of voices inside, but couldn't make out words. 20 minutes passed. 30. Finally, the door opened. Ruth emerged, her face harder than before. "Well," Caleb asked. "She showed me her wrists, told me about the chain, about the marks." Ruth's voice was tight. "She told me about Victor Crane, about the land her mother left her, about how her father's been trying to force her to sign it over for months. And?" Ruth met his eyes. "If I arrest Josiah Prescott, Victor Crane will have him out before morning. He'll claim it's all a misunderstanding, fatherly discipline gone too far. The judge will believe him. So we do nothing." "I didn't say that." Ruth pulled a folded paper from her coat. "I can't arrest him, but I can make sure the deed transfer doesn't happen. I've written to the territorial governor requesting that any land transactions involving Nora Prescott be suspended pending investigation." "How long will that take?" "Weeks, maybe months." "She doesn't have months." "I know." Ruth sighed. "For now, she's safest here with you. Josiah can't legally remove her from your property without my approval, and I won't give it. That buys us time." "Time for what?" Ruth didn't answer right away. She looked back at the house at the window where Nora's shadow moved behind the curtain. "Time for her to decide what she wants to do," Ruth said finally. "Because in the end, Thornton, this is her fight. We can stand beside her, but we can't fight it for her." She mounted her horse. "Watch your back," she called over her shoulder. "Crane doesn't like complications." Caleb watched her ride away until the darkness swallowed her whole. When he went back inside, Nora was sitting at the kitchen table. Her hands were wrapped around a cup of water, but she wasn't drinking. "She told you," Nora said. Not a question. "Some of it." "Did she tell you about my mother?" Caleb sat down across from her. "No." Nora's grip tightened on the cup. "My mother was Margaret Delacroix before she married my father. Her family came from Louisiana. They had nothing except a small piece of land here in Arizona that an uncle left them." She paused, took a breath. "That land has a spring on it, the only fresh water for 15 miles. When my mother was alive, she wouldn't sell, not for any price. She said water was life, and you don't sell life." "She sounds like a wise woman." She was. Nora's voice cracked just slightly. "She died when I was 12. Fever took her. Before she passed, she made sure the land was in my name, not my father's, mine. He couldn't touch it. Not legally." Nora looked up, meeting Caleb's eyes. "But he could touch me." The words hung in the air between them. "At first it was just pressure, asking me to sign, telling me it was for the family, for our future." Nora laughed bitterly. Then the asking turned to demanding. The demanding turned to threats. And the threats. She pulled back the sleeve of the canvas coat. The marks on her wrist were red and raw in the lamplight. The threats turned to this. Caleb's hands curled into fists beneath the table. "When did it start?" 6 months ago. When Victor Crane came to collect on my father's debts." Nora's eyes went hard. "Crane told my father he'd forgive everything the money the I owe us, all of it, if he could get my signature on a transfer deed. And your father agreed. My father would agree to anything if it meant more whiskey and another card game." Nora set down the cup. "So he locked me in the stable, said I'd stay there until I signed. 3 times a day he'd come check, make sure I hadn't changed my mind. 3 times a day. Morning, midday, night." Nora's voice was steady now, cold. "For 4 months I carved a mark every time he came. 97 marks total. 97 times I told him no." Caleb didn't speak. Couldn't speak. "And then you opened that door," Nora continued. "I don't know why. I don't know what you want from me. But I need you to understand something." She stood up, and despite her torn dress and bare feet and the bruises visible on her skin, she looked stronger than anyone Caleb had seen in a long time. I didn't survive 4 months in that stable by being weak. I didn't say no 97 times by being helpless. Whatever happens next, I'm not going to stand behind you and let you fight my battles." Caleb stood to face her. "I wouldn't expect you to." "Good." She held out her hand. "Then we have a deal. You give me work, I earn my keep, and when Crane comes, because he will come, we face him together." Caleb looked at her outstretched hand, at the raw marks on her wrist, at the fire in her eyes. He shook it. Together. That night, Caleb didn't sleep. He sat on the porch with his rifle across his knees, watching the road. Nora's door was locked. The house was quiet, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. It came just before dawn. The sound of hooves, multiple riders, moving fast. Caleb was on his feet before the first figure emerged from the darkness. 4 men, no 5. They pulled up in a loose formation just outside the ranch fence. The man in front dismounted slowly. He was tall, lean, dressed in a black coat that looked expensive, even coated in trail dust. His face was angular, almost handsome, with a thin mustache and eyes that reflected the pre-dawn light like a snake's. Victor Crane. "Mr. Thornton." Crane's voice was smooth, cultured, the voice of a man who made deals in back rooms and never had to raise his own fists. "I believe we have business to discuss." Caleb didn't lower his rifle. "Bit early for a social call. I'm a busy man." Crane smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "I understand you've taken something that belongs to my associate Josiah Prescott. His daughter isn't property. Legally speaking, a father has certain rights. Don't." Caleb's voice cut like a blade. "Don't come onto my land at dawn with 5 armed men and talk to me about legal rights." Crane's smile flickered, just for a moment. "I'm a reasonable man, Thornton. I'm here to make you an offer." "Not interested." "You haven't heard it yet." "Don't need to." Crane's jaw tightened. He wasn't used to being interrupted, wasn't used to being refused. "The girl signs the deed. Her father's debts are cleared. You receive $500 for your trouble. Everyone walks away satisfied. Except Nora. She'll be provided for, I give you my word." "Your word." Caleb laughed. It was not a kind sound. "Your word that she'll be provided for after you take the only thing her dead mother left her. Your word that she won't end up in another locked stable the moment she's served her purpose." Crane's eyes went cold. "Careful, Thornton. I'm trying to be civil here." "So am I. Civil would be shooting you off your horse right now. Instead, I'm giving you a chance to ride away." The 4 men behind Crane shifted. Hands moved toward guns. Caleb didn't flinch. "You've got no authority here," Crane said quietly. "No badge, no backing, just a rifle and a fool's sense of honor." "Maybe, but I've got good aim." Caleb raised the rifle slightly. "You want to test which one of you I hit first?" The standoff stretched. 1 second, 2, then the front door of the house opened. Nora stepped onto the porch. She was still wearing the canvas coat, still barefoot, still bearing the marks of months of captivity. But she walked forward until she stood beside Caleb facing the men who had come to claim her. "Mr. Crane?" Her voice didn't waver. "I remember you." Crane's eyes narrowed. "Miss Prescott, you look well. I look like someone who's been chained in a stable for 4 months because you wanted my land." Nora crossed her arms. "But I'm not there anymore, and I'm not signing anything. Your father, my father can rot in hell." The words came out sharp as broken glass. "And if you think you can come here and threaten Mr. Thornton into giving me up, you've made a serious mistake." "Have I?" "Marshall Decker knows I'm here. She knows about the land, about the debts, about everything. If I disappear, if anything happens to me, or to him, she'll know exactly who to look for." Crane's smile returned, but it was thinner now, meaner. "The marshal is one woman in a territory full of men who owe me favors." He leaned forward in his saddle. "Don't overestimate your position, Miss Prescott." "Don't underestimate mine, Mr. Crane." Nora took a step forward. I survived my father. I survived that stable. I survived saying no 97 times when every part of me wanted to give up. You think you scare me? She laughed. And it was not the broken laugh of a victim. It was the laugh of someone who had found the bottom and discovered she could climb. You're just another man who wants something that isn't his. I've faced worse. Silence. Crane stared at her. Something shifted behind his eyes. Calculation, reassessment, perhaps even the faintest flicker of respect. Then it was gone. This isn't over, he said softly. I came here as a courtesy. Next time I won't be so polite. He turned his horse. His men followed. They rode back toward town without another word. Caleb waited until they had disappeared into the growing dawn before he lowered his rifle. You shouldn't have come out here, he said. Probably not. Nora was shaking now, the adrenaline fading. But I couldn't let him think I was hiding behind you. It was dangerous. Everything's dangerous. She hugged herself suddenly, looking every bit her 19 years. At least this time, I got to choose my own danger. Caleb looked at her standing there in the early light, defiant, terrified, unbroken, and felt something shift in his chest. Something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Come inside, he said. I'll make coffee. She nodded, followed him in. Neither of them mentioned that his hand had brushed hers as they crossed the threshold. Neither of them mentioned that she hadn't pulled away. Some things didn't need words. The coffee was bitter and strong. They drank it in silence as the sun rose fully, painting the kitchen in shades of gold and red. He'll be back, Nora said finally. I know. Next time he'll bring more men, or he'll come at night, or he'll find another way. She wrapped her hands around her cup, seeking warmth despite the summer heat. That's how he works. He never takes the direct path when he can find a crooked one. You know him well. I know his type. Nora's jaw tightened. Men who smile while they rob you. Men who use the law like a weapon. My father was a fool, but Crane is something else. Then we need to be something else too. Nora looked up. What do you mean? Caleb set down his cup. Crane has money. He has men. He has judges in his pocket. We can't beat him by playing his game. So what's our game? Truth. Caleb leaned forward. Ruth said she wrote to the territorial governor. If we can get the attention of someone higher up, someone Crane can't buy, we might have a chance. That could take months. Then we survive for months. Nora laughed bitterly. Easy for you to say. You're not the one with a target on your back. You think Crane will let me walk away after this morning? Caleb shook his head. We're in this together now, whether we like it or not. Their eyes met across the table. Something passed between them, an understanding, an acknowledgement, maybe the first fragile thread of trust. I need to send word to Elena, Nora said, breaking the moment. She'll want to know I'm safe, and she might have information. She hears things in her shop, town gossip, rumors, complaints. You think she'll help? Elena helped my mother when nobody else would. Nora's voice softened. She's the closest thing I have to family now. Caleb nodded. I'll ride into town this afternoon. Deliver a message. Be careful. Crane will be watching. Let him watch. Caleb stood. I'm not hiding from anyone. He was almost to the door when Nora's voice stopped him. Thornton. He turned. She was still sitting at the table, but her eyes were different now. Less guarded, more vulnerable. Thank you, she said quietly, for not leaving me in that stable, for not backing down this morning, for... She trailed off, unable to find the words. Caleb understood. You don't have to thank me for treating you like a human being, he said. That should be the baseline, not the exception. He walked out before she could respond. In the barn, he saddled his horse with hands that weren't quite steady. The encounter with Crane had rattled him more than he wanted to admit. He had faced down plenty of dangerous men in his time as a deputy, but Crane was different. Crane was patient, calculated, the kind of man who would wait months, even years, to get what he wanted. And Crane wanted that water. Caleb rode toward Silver Creek just after midday. The town was quiet, too quiet for a summer afternoon. He felt eyes on him from the moment he crossed Main Street. Shop doors that should have been open were closed. People who should have been conducting business had disappeared. Crane's doing. A warning. Elena Vasquez's dress shop was on the corner of 2nd Street. The sign said, "Open," but the windows were dark. Caleb tied his horse and knocked. Footsteps. A curtain moved. Then the door opened a crack. "Mr. Thornton?" Elena's voice was tense. She was a small woman, dark-haired with lines around her eyes that spoke of hard years and harder choices. "You shouldn't be here." "I have a message from Nora Prescott." The door opened wider. "Inside, quickly." Caleb stepped in. Elena locked the door behind him and drew the curtain fully closed. "They've been watching my shop all morning," she said. "Crane's men. They think I don't notice, but I notice everything. Nora's safe. She's at my ranch." Elena closed her eyes, pressed a hand to her heart. "Thank God, thank God." When she opened her eyes, they were wet. "I've been praying for that girl since her mother died. I've been praying someone would help her." "I need your help now," Caleb said. "Nora needs clothes, boots, things I can't provide. I'll put together a bundle." Elena was already moving, pulling dresses from racks, gathering supplies. "But Mr. Thornton, you need to understand something." She turned to face him. "This town is afraid of Victor Crane. He owns the saloon, yes, but that's not the source of his power. He holds debts, secrets, things people would rather stay buried. Things like what? Like Judge Porter's gambling habit, like Sheriff Bradley's visits to certain establishments, like the mayor's son and what happened in Tucson last spring." Caleb's blood ran cold. "Crane has dirt on everyone." "Not everyone." Elena's chin lifted. "Not me, and apparently not you. I've only been here 6 months. Long enough for him to try." Elena handed him the bundle of clothes. "He sent a man to my shop last month. Offered me money to report on my customers. Who buys what? Who talks about what? And you refused." "My husband didn't die fighting for this territory so that I could sell my neighbor's secrets to a snake like Victor Crane." Elena's eyes flashed. "Some things matter more than safety, Mr. Thornton." Caleb looked at her, this small, fierce woman who had every reason to keep her head down and mind her own business. "You're the third person today who surprised me," he said. "Third. Ruth Decker didn't back down. Nora stood on my porch and told Crane to his face that she wasn't afraid." Caleb allowed himself a small smile. "Maybe this town isn't as broken as it looks. Maybe it just needed someone to stand up first." Elena pressed the bundle into his hands. "Tell Nora to be strong. Tell her we're watching. Tell her she's not alone." Caleb nodded and headed for the door. "Mr. Thornton." He paused. "Victor Crane isn't the only danger." Elena's voice was quiet. "Josiah Prescott has been drinking at the Dusty Rose all morning. He's been telling anyone who'll listen that you'll pay for what you did." "Let him talk." "He's not just talking." Elena's eyes met his. "He's gathering men, offering money he doesn't have for help he shouldn't need." Caleb's grip tightened on the bundle. "How many men?" "3 so far, maybe more by nightfall. 3 men, plus Josiah, plus Crane's 5 from this morning. The odds were getting worse." "Thank you, Elena." Caleb opened the door. "Stay safe." "You too, Mr. Thornton." Her voice followed him out. "And ride fast." He did. The ride back to the ranch felt longer than the ride in. Every shadow looked like a threat. Every sound could have been hoofbeats. Caleb pushed his horse harder than he should have, and by the time he reached his land, both he and the animal were coated in sweat. Nora was waiting on the porch. She had found a broom somewhere and had been sweeping through. Caleb suspected that was just an excuse to watch the road. "You're back." Relief flooded her voice. "I was starting to worry." "Ran into some complications." Caleb dismounted and handed her the bundle. "From Elena. She sends her love." Nora's face softened as she took the clothes. For a moment she looked like a different person. Younger. Lighter. Then the moment passed. "What kind of complications?" Caleb told her about Crane's men watching the shop, about Josiah gathering allies, about the fear that had settled over Silver Creek like a fog. Nora listened without interrupting. When he finished, she set the bundle down carefully. "We need to fortify," she said. "What?" "The ranch. The house. If they're coming tonight, we need to be ready." She straightened up, and once again Caleb saw the steel beneath the surface. "I spent 4 months in that stable learning to be patient, learning to wait, but I also learned to plan." She walked past him toward the barn. "Show me what weapons you have. Show me the layout of the land. Show me where they might try to come through." Caleb stood there for a moment watching her go. Then he followed. She had been in chains 2 days ago, starving, beaten, carved into a post, counting the hours of her captivity, and now she was organizing a defense like a general preparing for battle. Nora Prescott, he was beginning to realize, was not the girl her father had tried to break. She was something else entirely, and Victor Crane had no idea what he was up against. They worked until the sun touched the horizon. Nora moved with purpose Caleb hadn't expected. She checked every window latch, every door hinge, every shadow where a man might hide. She found his extra rifles in the back closet and loaded them without being asked. "You know your way around a gun," Caleb observed. "My mother taught me." Nora checked the sight on a Winchester. "Before she married my father. Before everything went wrong." She sounds like she was prepared for trouble. She was prepared for men. Nora set the rifle down. "Said you can't trust any of them. Said the ones who seem kindest are often the most dangerous." Caleb felt the words land somewhere deep. She might have been right. Nora looked at him then. Really looked. "I'm starting to think she might have been wrong." The moment stretched between them. Something unspoken. Something neither of them was ready to name. Then a horse screamed in the barn. Caleb grabbed his rifle and ran. Nora was right behind him, her bare feet silent on the dirt. They reached the barn door just as flames erupted from the hay storage. Fire, orange and red and hungry, climbing the wooden walls like a living thing. "The horses!" Nora sprinted past him toward the stalls. Caleb saw the shadow move too late. A man emerged from behind the burning hay. Big, bearded. One of Crane's from that morning. The man swung a shovel at Caleb's head. Caleb ducked, but the handle caught his shoulder. Pain exploded down his arm. He dropped the rifle. The man swung again. Caleb caught the handle twisted, drove his elbow into the man's throat. The attacker staggered back, choking. "Nora, get out." But Nora wasn't running. She had grabbed a pitchfork and was driving it toward a second man who had emerged from the smoke. The man dodged, grabbed her arm, yanked her off balance. Caleb's vision went red. He crossed the distance in 3 strides, grabbed the man by the collar, and threw him into the burning wall. The man screamed as flames caught his sleeve. He rolled away, beating at the fire, and fled into the night. Nora was already back on her feet. Blood ran from a cut on her forehead, but her eyes were clear. "The horses," she said again. They worked together. Caleb threw open stall doors while Nora guided the panicked animals toward the exit. Smoke filled their lungs. Heat pressed against their skin. But one by one, the horses bolted free into the darkness. The last one out, Caleb grabbed Nora's arm and pulled her toward the door. The roof collapsed behind them. They hit the ground hard, rolling away from the shower of sparks and burning timber. Caleb covered Nora with his body as debris rained down around them. When he lifted his head, the barn was gone, just a skeleton of flames reaching toward the stars. "Are you hurt?" His voice came out rough, smoke-scraped. "I'll live." Nora pushed herself up. Her hands were burned, her face streaked with soot, but she was alive. "They're here. This is just the beginning." As if on cue, gunfire erupted from the front of the house. Caleb hauled Nora to her feet. They ran for the back door, staying low, using the burning barn as cover from whoever was shooting. Inside the house, Caleb grabbed the rifles they had prepared, handed one to Nora. "How many?" she asked. "Don't know. At least 3 in the barn. More out front." A bullet shattered the kitchen window. Glass exploded across the floor. Nora dropped and returned fire without hesitation. The shot was wild, but it bought them time. Caleb moved to the front window, peered through the broken glass. 4 riders, circling, taking shots at the house from different angles. And there, hanging back near the road, a 5th figure on horseback. Watching. Victor Crane. "He's here," Caleb said. "Let him come." Nora reloaded. "I have something to say to him." More gunfire. A bullet tore through the wall inches from Caleb's head. He ducked, returned fire, heard someone cry out. "Got one. 3 left." Nora moved to the other window. Plus whoever else he brought. The shooting stopped. Silence. Heavy. Expectant. Then a voice rang out across the yard. "Thornton. Not Crane. Someone else." Caleb risked a look. Josiah Prescott stood in the middle of the yard. He was drunk, that was obvious from his swaying posture, but he held a torch in one hand and a pistol in the other. "Send out my daughter?" Josiah's voice cracked. "Send her out and this ends." Nora moved toward the door. "Don't," Caleb said. "He's my father. He's the man who chained you to a wall. I know what he is." Nora's eyes were hard. "But he's also a drunk and a coward. He won't shoot me, not in front of witnesses." "You don't know that. I know him better than anyone." She reached for the door handle. "Cover me." Before Caleb could stop her, she stepped onto the porch. Josiah's torch wavered. His pistol dipped. "Nora." His voice changed, softer, almost desperate. "Come home, please. We can fix this." "Fix what, father?" Nora walked forward slowly. "The chain. The marks. The 4 months you kept me in a stable like an animal. I was protecting you." "From what?" "From yourself." Josiah's voice rose. "You're just like your mother. Stubborn. Willful. You don't understand what's at stake." "I understand perfectly." Nora stopped 10 feet from him. "You sold me to Victor Crane, my signature for your debts. That's what this is about. It's about survival." Josiah's hand shook. The torch flickered. "You think I wanted this? You think I chose this life?" "Yes." The word came out cold, final. "You chose whiskey over your family. You chose cards over your daughter. You chose Victor Crane over your dead wife's memory." Josiah flinched like she had struck him. "Your mother? Don't." Nora's voice cracked now too. "Don't you dare speak her name. You lost that right when you started using her land as gambling collateral." Behind Josiah, Victor Crane finally moved. He dismounted slowly, deliberately, and walked forward until he stood at Josiah's shoulder. "Miss Prescott." Crane's voice was smooth as silk. "This has gone far enough. Come with us peacefully, and no one else has to get hurt. No one else." Nora laughed. "Your men tried to burn down the barn with me inside. You've been shooting at the house for the last 10 minutes. Don't pretend you care about anyone's safety." "I care about efficiency." Crane's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Your father owes me a considerable sum. The land you inherited is worth 10 times that debt. Sign it over and everyone walks away satisfied. Everyone except me. You'll be compensated. With what, a chain and a locked stall?" Crane's smile flickered. "Your father made certain mistakes in handling this situation. I assure you my approach would be different. Would it? Nora stepped closer. Would it really? She was close enough now that Caleb could see her hands shaking, but her voice stayed steady. You think I don't know what happens to women who get in your way, Mr. Crane? You think I don't know about Sarah Miller, about Rebecca Thorne, about all the others who decided to leave town after crossing you? Something shifted in Crane's face, the mask slipping just for a second. Those are rumors. Those are graves. Nora's chin lifted. I'd rather die on my feet than sign away my mother's legacy to a man like you. Crane's eyes went cold. That can be arranged. He raised his hand. A signal. Caleb burst through the front door, rifle raised. Touch her, and you die first. Crane's men hesitated. 3 of them mounted guns drawn. But Caleb had the drop on Crane himself. Mr. Thornton. Crane's voice stayed calm, but something in his posture had changed. You seem determined to make this difficult. I seem determined to keep her alive. At what cost? Crane gestured around them. Your barn is gone. Your horses are scattered. You're outnumbered 4-1. How long do you think you can hold out? Longer than you'd like. Perhaps. Crane tilted his head. But I'm a patient man. I can wait. Can you? A new voice cut through the night. Nobody's waiting for anything. Ruth Decker rode into the yard, badge gleaming in the torchlight. Behind her, 2 deputies on horseback. Crane's expression flickered. Surprise, quickly controlled. Marshal, what brings you out at this hour? Fire. Ruth's voice was ice. Saw the smoke from town. Thought I'd investigate. A tragic accident. Accidents don't usually involve armed men and gunfire. Ruth dismounted, hand resting on her pistol. I'm going to need everyone to lower their weapons, now. Josiah's pistol dropped immediately. Crane's men looked to their boss. Crane held Ruth's gaze for a long moment. Then he smiled. Of course, Marshal. We were just leaving. He turned back to Nora. Think about my offer, Miss Prescott. It won't stay open forever. He mounted his horse. His men followed. Josiah stood frozen in the yard, torch still burning. You too, Prescott. Ruth's voice left no room for argument. You're coming with me. Public intoxication at minimum. Probably more charges by morning. Ruth, please. Don't. She grabbed his arm. You've done enough damage tonight. She hauled him toward her horse. The torch fell to the ground, sputtering out. Caleb lowered his rifle. His arms ached. His lungs burned from smoke. But they were alive. Ruth paused before mounting. This isn't over, she said quietly. Crane doesn't give up. He'll be back with lawyers next time instead of guns. Then we'll be ready, Caleb replied. Ruth nodded slowly. She looked at Nora standing there in her soot-stained dress, blood still trickling from her forehead. You did good, girl. Your mother would be proud. Then she was gone, dragging Josiah behind her, her deputies flanking them as they rode toward town. The yard went silent. Caleb turned to Nora. She was shaking now, the adrenaline fading. It's over, he said softly. For tonight. For tonight. She wrapped her arms around herself. But tomorrow we figure out our next move. Caleb stepped closer. Tonight we survive. Nora looked up at him. In the dying light of the burning barn, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. He was going to kill me. Her voice came out small. My own father was going to let him kill me. Caleb didn't have words for that. No words could fix what her father had broken. So he did the only thing he could think of. He pulled her into his arms. She stiffened at first. Instinct. Months of learning that touch meant pain. Then she broke. The sobs came hard and fast, her whole body shaking against his. She cried for her mother, for the girl she had been before the stable, for every mark carved into that wooden post. Caleb held her. Let her grieve. Let her feel safe, maybe for the first time in months. When she finally pulled back, her face was wet and her voice was raw. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm not usually. You're not usually anything. Caleb's voice was firm but gentle. You're allowed to break. Everyone is. Nora laughed weakly, wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. You're a strange man, Caleb Thornton. He felt something warm in his chest at the sound of his first name on her lips. So I've been told. They stood there in the ruins of the night, the barn still smoldering, the house riddled with bullet holes, their enemies temporarily retreated but far from defeated. And somehow, impossibly, neither of them felt alone. The next 3 days passed in a blur of work and worry. Caleb salvaged what he could from the barn. The horses had scattered, but returned one by one, drawn back by familiarity. The house needed repairs, new glass-patched walls, a door that actually locked. Nora threw herself into the work with a ferocity that surprised him. She hauled lumber, mixed mortar, climbed onto the roof to fix shingles that had caught fire. You don't have to do all this, Caleb told her on the second day. Yes, I do. She drove another nail into the wall. Crane's men destroyed this because of me. I'm going to fix it. It wasn't because of you, it was because of him. Same difference. It's not. Caleb caught her arm, made her look at him. None of this is your fault. Not the fire, not Crane, not your father. Nora's jaw tightened. He's my blood. Blood doesn't make you responsible for someone else's choices. She held his gaze for a long moment. Something shifted in her expression. Not agreement exactly, but maybe the first crack in the wall of guilt she had built around herself. I'll think about it, she said finally. Caleb let her go. It was enough for now. On the third day, Ruth Decker rode up with news. Josiah's being held for trial, she said. Judge Porter wanted to let him go, but I have enough witnesses to the fire that he couldn't justify it. What about Crane? Caleb asked. Nothing sticks. Ruth's frustration was evident. His men swear they weren't at your ranch that night. He has an alibi, a poker game at the Dusty Rose with 6 upstanding citizens who'll swear he never left. Of course he does. But there's something else. Ruth's voice dropped. Something you need to hear. She dismounted and walked closer out of earshot of anyone who might be watching. I've been digging into Crane's past. He came to Silver Creek 5 years ago with enough money to buy the saloon outright. Nobody knew where the money came from. And now I know. Ruth's eyes were hard. Victor Crane isn't his real name. He was born Victor Cranston in Missouri. 20 years ago he was wanted for murder. The word hung in the air. Murder of who? His wife. Ruth paused. And his daughter. Caleb felt cold settle into his bones. They caught him. They thought they did, but he escaped from custody and disappeared. Changed his name, changed his face, some say, started over. And nobody recognized him. Nobody was looking. Ruth shook her head. That was before telegraphs reached everywhere, before photographs were common. He slipped through the cracks. Caleb turned to look at the house, at Nora, visible through the window, repairing a broken frame. He killed his own daughter, according to the records. Ruth followed his gaze. And now he's fixated on another young woman who won't do what he wants. We have to tell her. I'll tell her. Ruth started toward the house. She deserves to know what she's really up against. Caleb watched her go. Victor Crane, Victor Cranston, a man who had murdered his own blood. And he wanted Nora's land. What would he do when he realized he couldn't have it? The answer, Caleb knew, was already burning in the ashes of his barn. Nora didn't move when Ruth finished speaking. She stood by the window, hands still holding the hammer she had been using to repair the frame. Her knuckles had gone white. He killed them. Her voice came out flat, empty. His own family. According to the Missouri records, Ruth kept her voice steady. His wife tried to leave him. Took their daughter. He found them 3 days later. And the girl? Ruth hesitated. She was 14. The hammer slipped from Nora's grip, hit the floor with a dull thud. Caleb moved toward her, but she held up a hand. "Don't." She turned to face Ruth. "How do you know this is real? How do you know he's the same man?" "I sent a telegram to the Missouri Territorial Office. They wired back a description. Height, build, a scar on his left hand from a knife fight." "The scar." Nora's breath caught. "I've seen it. The night he came to collect my father's first debt. He grabbed my arm and I saw—" She stopped, pressed her hand against her mouth. Caleb couldn't stay back anymore. He crossed the room and stood beside her, not touching, just present. "This changes things," he said to Ruth. "It changes everything." Ruth pulled out a folded paper. "I've sent word to the territorial governor, requested a federal marshal. If we can prove Crane is Cranston, he'll be arrested and extradited to Missouri." "How long?" "Weeks, maybe a month." "We don't have a month." Nora's voice had hardened again. The shock was transforming into something else. Anger. Purpose. "He knows you're digging. He has spies everywhere. The moment he realizes you've found his past, he'll run." Ruth nodded. "Or he'll try to eliminate the threat first. The threat being us. The threat being anyone who knows." Caleb's mind raced. "Who else knows?" "Just us. And my deputies." Ruth paused. "I trust them. Mostly." "Mostly isn't good enough." "I know." Ruth folded the paper back into her coat. "Which is why I'm not waiting for the federal marshal. I'm going to confront Crane myself. Today. In public." "That's suicide." "It's strategy." Ruth's eyes met Caleb's. "If I accuse him openly in front of witnesses, he can't make me disappear quietly. He'll have to respond. Deny it. And that denial will be on record when the real marshals arrive. Or he'll kill you in front of those witnesses and claim self-defense." "He might try." Ruth's hand moved to her pistol. "But I've been handling dangerous men for longer than he's been hiding from his past." Nora stepped forward. "I'm coming with you." "No." Caleb and Ruth spoke at the same time. "I'm the one he wants. I'm the one with the land. If I'm there when you confront him, it adds weight to your accusation." Nora's chin lifted. "And I have a right to face the man who's been trying to destroy my life." Ruth looked at her for a long moment. Whatever she saw in Nora's face seemed to decide something. "Fine, but you stay behind me, both of you." Caleb wanted to argue. Every instinct screamed that this was wrong, that they should wait, plan, prepare. But he had seen that look in Nora's eyes before. In the stable, on the porch facing Crane, she had made her choice, and he had made his. "We ride together," he said. They reached Silver Creek just past noon. The town felt different, tense. Word had spread about the fire, about the standoff, about Josiah's arrest. People watched from doorways and windows. Nobody waved. Nobody smiled. Ruth led them straight to the Dusty Rose. The saloon was busy for midday. Too busy. Men crowded the bar, the tables, the corners. Crane's men, Caleb realized. All of them. This wasn't a random crowd. This was an audience. Crane expected them. He sat at his usual table in the back, a glass of whiskey in front of him, cards spread out like he had been playing solitaire. When Ruth pushed through the doors, he looked up with a smile that made Caleb's skin crawl. "Marshal Decker." Crane's voice carried across the room. "What an unexpected pleasure. Can I offer you a drink?" "I'm not here for drinks." Ruth walked forward until she stood in the center of the room. Caleb and Nora flanked her. "I'm here to ask you some questions." "Ask away." Crane spread his hands. "I'm an open book." "Are you—" Ruth pulled out the folded paper. "Then perhaps you can explain why a man named Victor Cranston, wanted for murder in Missouri, bears such a remarkable resemblance to you." The room went silent. Crane's smile didn't waver, but something flickered behind his eyes. Something cold. "I'm afraid I don't know anyone by that name." "The Missouri records say different." Ruth unfolded the paper. "Height 6'2", build lean. distinguishing mark scar on left-hand knife wound. She looked up. "Want to show us your hands, Mr. Crane?" The men around the room shifted. Hands moved toward holsters. The tension ratcheted up so fast, Caleb could taste it in the air. Crane stood slowly. He placed both hands on the table, palms down. "This is quite the accusation, Marshal." His voice was still smooth, but there was an edge to it now. "I hope you have evidence beyond a physical description. I have a witness who saw you kill your wife and daughter. He's being transported from Missouri as we speak." Lie. It had to be a lie. But Ruth delivered it with such conviction that even Caleb almost believed it. Crane's mask cracked. Just for a second. Just enough. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Ruth stepped closer. "You came to this town 5 years ago with money nobody could explain. You built your saloon on fear and secrets. You've destroyed anyone who got in your way. But you made a mistake, Crane. You got greedy. You wanted that girl's land badly enough to expose yourself." She pointed at Nora. "And now everyone in this room knows who you really are." The silence stretched. Every eye in the room was on Crane, watching, waiting. Then Crane laughed. It wasn't the smooth, cultured laugh Caleb had heard before. This was different. Rawer, more dangerous. "You think anyone here cares about some old murder charge?" Crane looked around the room at his men. "These men owe me their livelihoods, their secrets, their futures. They're not going to turn on me because some woman marshal waves a piece of paper." Maybe not. Ruth didn't back down. "But the federal marshals don't owe you anything, and they're coming." "Then I suppose we have a problem." Crane's hand moved toward his coat. Caleb drew first. The click of his pistol cocking echoed through the silent room. "Don't." Crane froze. His eyes locked onto Caleb's. "You're fast," Crane said softly. "Faster than I expected. I used to be a deputy, before I learned that badges don't always mean justice. And now I just want to keep her safe." Caleb's aim didn't waver. "Walk away, Crane. Walk away right now, and nobody has to die." "Walk away." Crane laughed again. "You don't understand, do you? I can't walk away. That land isn't just about water. It's about power, about control, about everything I've built in this town." "Then build somewhere else." "There is nowhere else." Crane's voice hardened. "This is my kingdom. These are my subjects. And I will not let some rancher and his rescued stray take it from me." Nora moved then. She stepped past Ruth, past Caleb's outstretched arm, and walked straight toward Crane's table. "Nora," Caleb started. "He called me a stray." Nora's voice cut like a blade. "He compared me to a lost animal, just like my father did." She stopped 3 feet from Crane. "You want my land? You want that water?" She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded document. "Here's the deed. Signed, witnessed, legal." Crane's eyes widened. His hand reached out. Nora pulled the paper back. "But first, you're going to tell everyone in this room the truth. About Missouri. About your wife. About your daughter." "You're insane." "Maybe." Nora's smile was terrible. 4 months in a stable does things to a person. But I'm not signing anything until you admit what you are." Crane's face twisted. The smooth mask was gone completely, now replaced by something ugly, something feral. "You stupid girl!" He lunged across the table. Nora dodged. The deed slipped from her hand. Crane grabbed for it. So did 3 of his men. Chaos erupted. Caleb fired into the ceiling. "Nobody move!" But it was too late. Bodies crashed together, tables overturned. Someone threw a punch. Someone else drew a knife. In the confusion, Nora scrambled for the deed. Her fingers closed around it just as a heavy boot came down on her hand. She screamed. Crane stood over her, grinding her fingers into the floor. "I've killed before," he hissed. "I'll kill again. Give me the paper." "Never." Caleb shoved through the fighting men, but two of Crane's thugs intercepted him. He took a punch to the ribs, another to the jaw. Tasted blood. Ruth had drawn her pistol, but she couldn't fire into the crowd without hitting innocents. Crane reached down and grabbed Nora by the throat, lifted her off the ground. Last chance. Nora's free hand clawed at his grip. Her face was turning red. The deed crumpled in her other fist. I would rather die, she choked out, than let you have anything that belonged to my mother. Crane's grip tightened. A gunshot rang out. Crane's body jerked. He released Nora, stumbling backward, staring at the red bloom spreading across his shoulder. In the doorway stood Elena Vasquez, holding a smoking pistol. Get away from her. The fighting stopped. Everyone froze, staring at the small Mexican woman who had just shot the most powerful man in Silver Creek. Crane pressed his hand against his wounded shoulder. Blood seeped between his fingers. You. His voice was barely a whisper. You dare. I dare. Elena walked forward. Her pistol never wavered. My husband died protecting this territory from men like you. I'll be damned if I let you destroy another family. Ruth moved quickly. She grabbed Crane's arms, wrenched them behind his back, snapped iron cuffs around his wrists. Victor Crane, also known as Victor Cranston. I'm arresting you for assault, attempted murder, and suspicion of the murders of Martha and Alice Cranston in Missouri 18 years ago. Crane struggled. You can't do this. I own this town. You don't own anything anymore. Ruth shoved him toward the door. And by the time the federal marshals get here, everyone in Arizona will know exactly who you are. She dragged him out. Her deputies flanked them, guns drawn. Caleb pushed free of the men holding him and ran to Nora. She was still on the floor, gasping for breath, one hand pressed against her bruised throat. Nora, look at me. Her eyes found his. Wild, frightened, but alive. I'm okay. Her voice came out raspy. I'm okay. Caleb pulled her into his arms. He didn't care who was watching, didn't care about propriety or appearances or anything except the feel of her heart beating against his chest. You scared me. The words came out rough, broken. You scared me so much. I had to. She clung to him. I had to face him. I had to. I know. He pulled back enough to look at her face. I know. Around them, Crane's men were scattering. Without their leader, they were just hired thugs with no one to pay them. Some ran for the door. Others raised their hands in surrender. Ruth's deputies rounded them up one by one. Elena knelt beside Nora and Caleb. Are you hurt? Her hands moved to Nora's throat, checking for damage. I'll have bruises. Nora managed a weak smile. But I'll live. You were very brave. Elena's eyes were wet. Your mother would be proud. Nora's breath caught. The tears she had been holding back finally spilled over. I miss her. The words came out small, childlike. I miss her so much. Elena gathered her into her arms. Caleb stepped back, giving them space. His whole body ached from the fight, but it was a distant pain, unimportant. What mattered was that Nora was safe. What mattered was that Crane was finished. What mattered was that for the first time since he'd opened that stable door, he could breathe without the weight of impending disaster crushing his chest. Outside, Ruth loaded Crane into a wagon. The whole town had gathered to watch. Men and women who had been afraid for years, who had kept their heads down and paid their debts and never questioned anything, now stood in open sunlight and stared at the monster in chains. It's over. Caleb said the words out loud, just to hear them, just to make them real. But even as he spoke, he knew it wasn't quite true. Crane was captured, his empire was crumbling. But there was still a trial to come, still testimony to give, still a long road before justice was truly served, and there was still Josiah Prescott sitting in jail, waiting for his own reckoning. Nora's father, the man who had started all of this. Caleb looked back through the saloon doors. Nora was standing now, leaning on Elena, wiping her eyes. She met his gaze across the room. In her eyes, he saw the same thing he felt in his own heart. Relief, gratitude, and something else, something deeper, something neither of them had dared to name, not yet, but soon. The ride back to the ranch was quiet. Nora sat beside Caleb in the wagon. Her hand rested near his on the seat. Not touching, but close. "What happens now?" she asked finally. "Crane goes to trial. Here first, then Missouri, if they can prove the murder charges." "And my father," Caleb hesitated. "That's up to you." Nora was silent for a long moment. "He's still my blood." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I hate what he did. I'll never forgive him for it. But he's still—" "I know. Is that wrong?" She turned to look at him. "Is it wrong to still feel something for someone who hurt you?" Caleb thought about Texas, about Sarah, about all the complicated feelings that never quite resolved themselves even years later. "I think," he said slowly, "that loving someone and holding them accountable can exist at the same time. You don't have to choose." Nora considered this. "Ruth said he'll probably serve 5 years for what he did to me, maybe more. He'll be an old man when he gets out. Maybe by then he'll be different." Nora's jaw tightened. "Or maybe he'll be exactly the same. I can't know. I can only know who I want to be." "And who's that?" She looked at him, really looked, and for the first time since he'd found her in that stable, she smiled. A real smile. Not bitter, not broken, just warm. "Someone who builds things instead of breaking them." She paused. "Someone who lets herself be helped without feeling weak. Someone who—" She stopped, looked away. "Someone who—" "What?" Caleb asked softly. "Someone who isn't afraid to feel things again." The words hung between them. Caleb reached over, covered her hand with his. She didn't pull away. They rode the rest of the way in silence, hands intertwined, watching the sun sink toward the horizon. And for the first time in years, Caleb felt something he had forgotten was possible. Hope. The trial began 3 weeks later. Victor Crane stood in chains before Judge Harrison, a federal judge brought in from Phoenix, specifically because every local official had been compromised. The courtroom was packed. People stood in the aisles, pressed against the walls, spilled out into the street, where they strained to hear through open windows. Nora sat in the front row. Her hands were steady in her lap, but Caleb could see the tension in her shoulders. He sat beside her close enough that their arms touched. Ruth Decker took the stand first. She laid out the evidence piece by piece, the Missouri records, the matching description, the witness testimony from 3 men who had worked for Crane and decided that loyalty wasn't worth hanging for. Crane's lawyer tried to object. Judge Harrison overruled him every time. When the prosecution called Nora to testify, she stood without hesitation. "Miss Prescott." The prosecutor was a young man from the territorial attorney's office, sharp-eyed and determined. "Can you describe your interactions with the defendant?" "He came to my father's property 6 months ago." Nora's voice carried through the silent courtroom. "He told my father that my signature on a land deed would clear his debts. When I refused, my father began, encouraging me to change my mind." "Encouraging how?" Nora pulled back her sleeve. The scars on her wrist had faded to pink, but they were still visible. "With a chain and a locked stall. For 4 months." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "And you believe Mr. Crane was aware of these methods? He knew?" Nora's eyes found Crane across the room. He stared back with cold hatred. "He visited twice during those 4 months. Both times he saw where I was kept. Both times he told my father to keep trying." "Objection." Crane's lawyer stood. "Hearsay. I'll allow it." Judge Harrison's voice was ice. "Continue, Miss Prescott." "The second time he visited, he leaned down to where I was sitting in the straw. He grabbed my chin and forced me to look at him." Nora's voice didn't waver. "He said, 'Some animals need to be broken before they're useful.' Then he walked away." The courtroom erupted. Judge Harrison banged his gavel for order. Caleb's hands had curled into fists. He forced himself to breathe, to stay seated, to let justice work the way it was supposed to. The trial lasted 4 days. By the end, the evidence was overwhelming. Crane was convicted of conspiracy, extortion, assault, and accessory to false imprisonment. The murder charges from Missouri would come later, once he was extradited. When the verdict was read, Crane showed no emotion. He simply looked at Nora with those cold, dead eyes and said loud enough for the whole courtroom to hear, "This isn't over." 2 marshals dragged him away. Nora didn't flinch, but later in the wagon heading back to the ranch, she finally let herself shake. He meant it. Her voice was small. "He's going to spend the rest of his life trying to destroy me. He's going to spend the rest of his life in a cell." Caleb kept his eyes on the road. Men like him make threats because that's all they have left. What if he escapes? What if he has people on the outside who, then we deal with it? Caleb pulled the horses to a stop, turned to face her fully. "Nora, look at me." She did. Her eyes were wet, but the tears hadn't fallen. "You survived 4 months in a stable. You faced your father. You testified against a murderer in open court. You are the strongest person I have ever met." He took her hands in his. "Whatever comes next, we face it together. That's not going to change." Nora's breath caught. "You keep saying that. Together." "I keep meaning it." "Why?" The question hung in the air between them. Caleb could have given her a dozen practical answers. Could have talked about justice, about doing the right thing, about his own guilt from Texas. Instead, he told her the truth. "Because somewhere between that stable and today, I stopped thinking about keeping you safe and started thinking about keeping you close." Nora stared at him. Her lips parted slightly. "Caleb, I know it's too soon. I know you've been through things that no person should have to survive. I'm not asking for anything. I just..." She kissed him. It wasn't tentative, wasn't careful. She grabbed the front of his shirt and pulled him to her, like she had been waiting for this moment since he first opened that stable door. Caleb's hands came up to cup her face. She tasted like dust and tears, and something sweeter underneath. Something that felt like the beginning of everything. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nora laughed. It was the first real laugh he had heard from her, full and bright and completely unexpected. "I've been wanting to do that for weeks." She pressed her forehead against his. "I was starting to think you'd never say anything. I'm not good with words." "I noticed." She pulled back enough to look at him. "But you're good at everything else." Caleb felt something loosen in his chest. Something that had been clenched tight since Texas, since Sarah, since all the failures that had driven him to Arizona in the first place. "We should probably keep moving," he said. "People might talk. Let them talk." Nora settled back into her seat, but her hand found his again. "I spent 4 months hiding from the world. I'm done hiding." They rode the rest of the way with their fingers intertwined. 3 days later, Josiah Prescott was released from jail. Caleb found out from Ruth, who rode to the ranch at dawn with the news. The charges against Crane were so big that the court decided to show leniency to the smaller fish. Ruth's face was grim. Josiah cooperated, testified against Crane's operations. They dropped most of the charges in exchange for his testimony. What about what he did to Nora? 6 months for unlawful restraint, time served. Caleb felt the anger rise in his chest. That's it. 6 months for chaining his own daughter like an animal. "I know." Ruth shook her head. But without Nora pressing charges herself. She testified. She showed her scars. Against Crane, not her father. Ruth met his eyes. The prosecutor asked if she wanted to pursue separate charges against Josiah. She said no. Caleb's anger shifted. Confused now. "Why?" "That's something you'll have to ask her." He found Nora by the rebuilt fence, watching the horses graze. She had heard the news already. Word traveled fast in small towns. "He's out," Caleb said. I know. Ruth said you didn't press charges. Nora was quiet for a long moment. He's my father. Her voice was steady, but there was something underneath it, something complicated. What he did was unforgivable, but sending him to prison for years wouldn't heal these scars. Then what will? She turned to face him. Living. Building something new. Being happy in spite of what he took from me. She reached up and touched his face. That's the only revenge that matters. Caleb covered her hand with his. And if he comes back, if he tries to, then I'll deal with him myself. Her eyes hardened. But I won't let him live in my head anymore. 4 months of marks on a post. 3 times a day. That's over now. I decide what counts. I decide when to let go. Caleb understood. He thought about Texas, about the guilt he had carried for 3 years, about the grave he had never visited. Maybe I should take my own advice, he said quietly. Nora squeezed his hand. Maybe we both should. A week later, they rode to the Prescott property, not to see Josiah. He had disappeared after his release, gone to Tucson or California, or wherever men went when they had nothing left. They rode to see the land. Nora's land. Her mother's legacy. The spring bubbled up from the rocks exactly where Nora remembered. Clear water in the middle of desert. Life in the midst of death. Nora knelt beside it, dipped her fingers in. Let the cool water run over the scars on her wrist. I haven't been here since she died. Her voice was thick. My father wouldn't let me. Said it was too dangerous for a girl alone. What do you think now? Nora stood, looked around at the land that had nearly cost her everything. I think it's time to come home. The words landed in Caleb's chest like a punch. He had known this was coming, had known that eventually she would want to reclaim what was hers. But hearing it out loud still hurt. You're leaving the ranch. Nora turned to him, saw his face, and smiled. Who said anything about leaving? You just said, I said it's time to come home. She stepped closer, took both his hands in hers. But home isn't a place, Caleb. I learned that in the stable. Home is where you feel safe, where you're seen, where someone stands beside you when the world goes dark. She pressed her palm against his chest over his heart. Home is here. Caleb couldn't speak. The words stuck in his throat. Unless? Nora's confidence flickered. Unless you don't want. He kissed her, poured everything he couldn't say into that kiss, all the fear and hope and desperate love that had been building since the moment he first saw her in that stall. When they broke apart, Nora was laughing again, crying and laughing at the same time. I'll take that as a yes. It's a yes. Caleb's voice came out rough. It's always been a yes. They stood together by the spring, holding each other, letting the future unfold before them. What do we do with this land? Caleb asked finally. Nora thought for a moment. We build on it. A second house, maybe. A place for Elena when she's ready to retire from the shop. A place for anyone who needs shelter. She looked at him. A place like you gave me. A sanctuary. Something like that. Nora leaned into him. My mother always said water was life. Maybe it's time to prove her right. 2 months later, they broke ground on the new building. Elena came out to help. So did Ruth on her days off. Even some of Crane's former workers' men who had realized too late what kind of monster they had served showed up looking for honest work and a chance to make amends. Nora directed the construction with the same intensity she had brought to everything else. She knew exactly what she wanted: a bunkhouse for travelers, a small clinic for when the doctor from town couldn't make it out, a kitchen big enough to feed a dozen people. You're building a town, Caleb observed one evening. I'm building a start. Nora wiped the sweat from her face. Someone has to. He watched her work, watched her laugh with Elena, negotiate with suppliers, stand her ground against men twice her size, who tried to tell her she was doing it wrong. This was not the girl he had found in that stable. This was who she had always been underneath the chains and the fear and the marks on the post. Strong, capable, fierce, and she had chosen him. The thought still amazed him, even after all these weeks. One night, as they sat on the porch of his ranch, watching the stars emerge, Nora asked the question he had been dreading. "Tell me about Texas." Caleb went still. "Ruth mentioned you used to be a deputy, said something happened that made you leave." Nora's voice was gentle. "You don't have to tell me, but I want you to know that whatever it is, it won't change anything." He was quiet for a long time. The night sounds filled the silence. Crickets, a distant coyote, the soft whicker of horses in the rebuilt barn. "Her name was Sarah." The words came out slowly, like he was pulling them from somewhere deep. "She was married to a man named Tom Dawkins. He beat her. Everyone in town knew. Nobody did anything." Nora's hand found his. "I tried to help her. Found her hiding in a church after he broke 2 of her ribs. Offered to take her away. Get her somewhere safe." Caleb's voice cracked. "She said she couldn't leave. Said he'd find her. Said it was easier to stay." "What happened?" "I respected her choice." The bitterness in his voice was sharp. "Told myself it wasn't my place to force her. 2 weeks later, Tom killed her. Beat her to death in their own kitchen." Nora's grip tightened. "I found the body." Caleb closed his eyes. "I arrested Tom. He hanged 3 months later. Justice served." He laughed, but it was a broken sound. "Except it wasn't justice. It was too late. I could have taken her that night. Could have ignored what she said and gotten her out anyway. But I didn't. It wasn't your fault. Everyone says that. Because it's true." Nora shifted closer, made him look at her. "She made her own choice, Caleb. A terrible one, but hers. You couldn't have forced her to leave any more than you could have made my father stop drinking." "But if I had, then you would have been a different man. One who doesn't listen. One who thinks he knows better than everyone else." Nora's eyes were fierce. "That man wouldn't have given me a lock on the inside of my door. That man wouldn't have let me face Crane on my own terms. That man wouldn't have waited for me to be ready." Caleb stared at her. "You saved me, Caleb Thornton. Not by deciding what was best for me. By standing beside me while I figured it out myself." She pressed her forehead against his. "That's who you are. That's who I love." The word hung in the air. Love. Neither of them had said it before. Not directly. "I love you too." The words came out easier than he expected. "I have since the moment you threw straw in your father's face." Nora laughed. The sound was pure joy. "That was my finest moment." It really was. They held each other under the endless Arizona sky, 2 broken people who had somehow found their way to whole. The building was finished by winter. They called it Margaret's Rest after Nora's mother. Word spread quickly. Within weeks, travelers were stopping by for water and food. A family fleeing trouble in California stayed for 2 weeks before moving on. A young woman running from a violent husband found shelter there for 3 months before relocating to San Francisco with money Nora had quietly provided. Ruth Decker came by one afternoon with news. "Victor Crane is dead." Her voice carried no satisfaction, just fact. "Killed trying to escape during his transfer to Missouri. Shot by one of the marshals." Nora set down the dish she had been drying. "Is it terrible that I feel relieved?" "It's honest." Ruth sat down at the table. "He can't hurt anyone else now. That's worth something." "And my father—" Ruth hesitated. "Word came through from Tucson. Josiah Prescott died in a bar fight 2 months ago. Too drunk to defend himself. Someone stabbed him over a card game." Nora was very still. Caleb moved to her side, ready to catch her if she fell. But she didn't fall. She took a deep breath, released it slowly. "I thought I would feel more." Her voice was distant. But I think I said goodbye to him a long time ago, in that stable, when he chose whiskey and debts over his own daughter. It's okay to grieve, Ruth said quietly. Even for people who hurt us. I know. Nora looked at Caleb. But I have too much to live for now. I can't spend my life grieving what could have been. That night Nora went to the spring alone. Caleb understood. Some things needed to be done in solitude. She came back 3 hours later, eyes red but calm. I forgave him. She sat down beside Caleb on the porch. Not for his sake, for mine. How do you feel? Lighter. She leaned her head against his shoulder. Free. They sat together watching the moon rise over the desert. I've been thinking, Caleb said finally. About what? About next spring, when the weather warms up. Nora lifted her head, looked at him with curiosity. Caleb reached into his pocket, pulled out a small band of twisted metal. It wasn't much something he had made himself from a piece of copper wire, but it caught the moonlight and glowed. I'm not good with words. His voice was rough. But I know what I want. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to build things with you. I want to face whatever comes together. Nora stared at the ring. Are you asking? I'm asking. For a moment she didn't speak. Then she held out her left hand. The hand with the scars on the wrist. The hand that had carved 97 marks into a wooden post. Yes? The word came out strong and clear. Yes, Caleb Thornton. I'll marry you. He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. When he kissed her this time, it felt like coming home. Spring arrived exactly as it should. The desert bloomed with wildflowers. The spring ran clear and cold. Margaret's Rest had become a true sanctuary known throughout the territory as a place where broken people could find shelter. And on a warm morning in April, Nora Prescott became Nora Thornton. Elena Vasquez served as witness. Ruth Decker stood guard at the door, just in case old habits died hard. The ceremony was simple. The vows were honest. Afterward, standing by the spring where her mother's memory lived on, Nora looked at the man who had opened a stable door and changed her life. You know what I realized, she said. What? Those marks I carved on the post, 97 of them. I thought they were counting my captivity. She touched the ring on her finger, but they were counting something else. What's that? Nora smiled, the smile of a woman who had walked through fire and emerged stronger. The number of times I said no, the number of times I refused to break. She took his hand. I didn't survive that stable despite those marks. I survived because of them. Every single one was proof that I was still fighting. Caleb pulled her close. And now I don't need marks anymore. Nora looked up at the vast Arizona sky, at the future stretching endlessly before them. Because I'm not counting days until I'm free. I'm living them. And she was. They both were. Two people who had known the worst of humanity and chosen against all odds to believe in the best. Two people who had found each other in the darkest place and walked together into the light. Some stories end with happily ever after. This one ended with something better. This one ended with hope. And hope, as Nora Thornton knew better than anyone, was the one thing that could never be chained.